I'm going to show you 6 unique checkmate traps that happened in real games. So here is the first one. White starts the game with e4, black plays e5, white attacks the e5 pawn, black defends with knight c6, and here white plays c3, the Ponziani opening, preparing to play d4 in his next move, and here black plays knight to f6, and now white plays d4, attacking the center. While here black could play e into d4, but white in this case might end up playing e5, kicking black's knight over here. So that is why instead of capturing this pawn, black decided to capture the undefended e4 pawn over here. So black plays knight into e4, and here white plays d5, kicking the c6 knight, knight goes to e7, and now white captures on e5 with his knight, and here black decides to play knight g6. The idea is, since the knight was sitting here and was blocking the queen's and the bishop's path, he wanted to get out of their way. So black plays knight to g6, and now white plays bishop d3, attacking this e4 knight over here. So here it looks like that white is ready to exchange knights. So if black takes this knight, then white will take this knight over here, and both of them would be equal in material. But black now thinks, since anyway this knight is gonna go off the board, why don't I play an in-between move, and that is knight into f2, forking white's pieces over here. But here white, instead of capturing this knight over here, plays a very surprising move, and that is bishop into g6. Black gets extremely shocked here. Why white is sacrificing his queen over here? Well, he thinks for a while but doesn't understand white's reason for sacrificing the queen, and that is why he takes on d1. So knight into d1, but capturing the queen over here was a big blunder, because white will now start a mating attack against black's king. How? Well, the first move is bishop into f7 check, king moves to e7, the only square. Now white brings his other bishop, bishop g5 check, king has only one place to go, so king moves to d6. Now white checks the king with his knight, so knight c4 check, the only square that king can go to is c5. And now here, instead of getting greedy and capturing this black queen over here, white decides to finish off black's game by playing knight b to a3. Since black king is so out in the open, this knight move took away even this square from the king and also gave protection to this knight. And here black is completely lost and tries to somehow save his game by capturing this free bishop over here and saving his queen. So he plays queen into g5, but that move finishes off black's game in just one move, and that is b4 checkmate. Let's look at the second game. White starts the game with e4, black plays e5, white attacks the e5 pawn, black defends with knight c6. Now here white plays bishop c4, and this is the Italian game, and here black plays knight to f6, attacking this e4 pawn over here. And now here, instead of playing the standard d3 or knight c3 move, which could have protected this pawn over here, white plays a very interesting move, and that is knight to g5, attacking this weak f7 pawn over here along with his bishop. Black now plays d5 to block this attack, and here white takes the pawn with his pawn, attacking this knight over here, and now the knight moves to d4. And now here, since white wants to revive his attack on the f7 pawn, therefore he decides to play d6. And here, instead of focusing on protecting this pawn, black just decides to ignore this pawn completely and plays queen into d6, allowing white to fork black's pieces. And now white plays knight into f7, and now black moves his queen to c6, forking white's g2 pawn as well as this bishop over here. Now ideally the best move for white here would have been kingside castling, but white gets greedy and decides to capture the rook on the h8 square. So he plays knight into h8, black captures the pawn on g2 with an attack on this rook. Rook moves to f1, queen comes to e4 and gives check to the king. Notice how this square is covered by black's queen as well as black's knight. So getting white's queen here to block the check would actually end up losing material for white. So that is why Without any giving a second thought, white plays bishop e2, blocking this check. But that move was a horrible blunder because black then finished this game with knight f3, a beautiful smothered checkmate. Enjoying this video? Then do like this video and subscribe to my channel. Now let's quickly look at the third game. White starts with e4, black plays e5, knight f3, knight c6, pretty standard moves. White here now play knight to c3, the 3 knights opening, and here black plays g6, preparing to fianchetto his dark squared bishop on this diagonal. And white here now decides to open up the center by playing d4. Black captures this pawn and now knight moves to d5. Black fianchettos his bishop and white gets his dark squared bishop out on the g5 square, attacking the queen. And notice how both of these white's pieces are controlling this key f6 square over here. And here black decides to block this attack with a normal looking move, knight g2 e7. But this move that black just played is a disaster. A better move would have been blocking this attack with this knight and not with this knight. And the reason is this knight is still helping black to control this important square which the white pieces are aiming at. But now blocking this attack with this knight weakens this square of which white takes immediately advantage of. So white starts the attack with a sacrifice. He first plays knight into d4. Notice the only protector of this knight is this queen, while this knight is attacked by 2 of black's pieces. So black happily takes this knight with his bishop, and now white goes bold in the game and makes another sacrifice with queen into d4. Black happily accepts the sacrifice with his knight without realizing that he will be now crushed to death in this game. White now attacks the king with knight f6 check, king moves to f8, the only square, and now bishop h6 ends the game for black. Let's look at another amazing game. White starts with e4 and here black plays e6, the French defense. White plays d4 taking control of the center and black attacks the center with d5. White plays knight to c3, providing defense to this pawn, and here black captures the e4 pawn, white captures back with his knight, and black now plays knight to d7. The idea is that after black develops this knight on this square, if the white knight captures on the g6 square, then he would not have to get his queen out to capture here. So that is why he is playing knight d7 first to make sure that in case of an exchange of pieces on this square, this knight can jump on this f6 square. White plays knight to f3, a normal developing move, and now black plays knight g to f6, expecting that white will exchange pieces on this square. But here white doesn't go for an exchange of piece but rather plays knight f to g5, a very interesting move, attacking this weak f7 pawn over here. Black doesn't panic and plays bishop to e7, preparing to quickly castle on the king side. And here white shocks black with knight into f7, sacrificing his knight. Since the queen is trapped over here and is under attack, black is forced to take this knight with his king. And now the other knight jumps to the g5 square, attacking this king as well as this weak pawn over here. If the king goes to a8 square, then knight into e6 will simply win black's queen. If the king goes on f8 square, then knight into e6 will fork black's pieces, winning black's queen again. So that's why the only logical move here is king to g8. And now white happily captures this pawn over here, attacking black's queen. Queen moves to e8, the only logical square. And here white gets extremely greedy and goes for knight into c7, forking black's pieces. But that move was horrible because black checkmated white's game in the next move. Can you find that move? I'll give you 5 seconds to think. Yes, you are right. Bishop b4 is a checkmate. There is a double attack on this white king from both of these black's pieces and white cannot defend this check. So bishop b4 led to a checkmate. Now let's look at an interesting game. The game started with e4, black played c5, the Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, and now white decides to open up the center with d4. Black captures on d4, white captures back, and here black plays knight to f6, attacking this pawn over here. White defends with knight to c3, and here black plays e5, attacking this knight, and white moves the knight to b5 square. Black plays d6, pretty standard opening moves, and here white plays knight d5. Notice how both these knights are aiming at the weak c7 square and are threatening to fort black's pieces. Black doesn't want to lose material, so that is why he captures the d5 knight. White captures back with his pawn, attacking this knight over here. Knight moves to e7 square, putting pressure on this d5 pawn. And here white plays c4, strengthening white's control over the center and providing extra protection to both of these white's pieces. And here, because this knight is so nicely placed in black's territory, black was getting very uncomfortable with this knight. So that is why he decided to play a6, which looks very normal at first sight. But this move immediately worsened black's game because white then played queen to a4. Notice this pawn cannot capture this knight because otherwise this white queen will take this free rook over here and black would be terribly down in material. So black here decides to counter attack with bishop d7. Notice how this bishop is eyeing this queen over here and this knight is now pinned with an attack with this pawn, and he thinks his game is extremely good now without realizing that white can now immediately checkmate the game with knight into d6. It's a smothered mate. And now, before showing you the last game, I really want you to check out the membership program of this channel. Do join us today. And now here comes the last game. White starts the game with e4, e5, knight f3, and here black plays d6, which is the Philidor defense. And white now plays d4, opening up the center, and instead of capturing here, black decides to play f5, which is the Philidor counter gambit. And here white plays bishop c4, preparing to castle his king before opening up the center. And black here goes bold and decides to open up the center with e into d4. White takes e into f5, and now because the king is wide open over here, black checks the king with queen e7. Now ideally, white could have blocked this check with this bishop over here, or maybe with his queen, or he could have also decided to move his king to this square, but here he plays a very interesting move, and that is king d2. Thinking that since black's king and queen are lined up on the same file and this e file is wide open over here, in the next move white will be able to pin his queen to the king by getting his rook on this e1 square. So that is why white decided to move his king to the d2 square. And here black plays g6, allowing white to get his rook on this open e file. White gets very happy. He immediately plays rook e1, pinning black's queen to the black's king. But that move was a blunder because since white's king is open over here, he can now be easily attacked with all of these black's pieces. So black starts the attack with bishop h6 check, king moves to d3, the only square. Now he gets his other bishop out, bishop into f5 check. Now if white tries to block this check with rook e4, then queen into e4 would be a checkmate. That is why the only other move available for white is to capture this pawn. So king captures the d4 pawn, black checks again with bishop g7. Notice how these bishops are beautifully cutting off white's king's escape squares. So here the only square that the king can now go to is the d5 square, and now c6 leads to checkmate of the game. And now here is the question of the day for you. It is black's turn in the game, and black can checkmate this game in just 2 moves. Can you find those moves? Let me know your answers in the comments box, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep learning, keep practicing.